Good morning to all you ladies across South Africa. Welcome to our Prescient webinar. It's Catalysts for Sustainable Change for Women in Business and Society. Gloria Steinem, world-renowned feminist activist and journalist, once explained, the story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist or any one organization, but rather to the collective who cares about human rights. I think that's a really, really powerful statement. Gender equality is essential for businesses, economies, and communities to thrive. And sustainable change can only really be driven from underlying changes. So within organizations, focus needs to shift to diversity and inclusion. Likewise, or similarly, in society, I think advocacy, inclusive mindsets, and tangible action towards supporting and empowering women are needed for us to see real shifts. The International Women's Day 2020 theme is #Each for Equal. So the theme is drawn from a notion of collective individualism. We're all part of a whole. So our individual actions, conversations, mindsets, behaviors can all impact our larger society. We can actively choose to challenge biases and stereotypes, broaden perceptions, and impact the people around us. Together, we can make change happen and create a more gender equal world. So we're privileged to have two women who I believe embody these qualities with us today. They act and serve as catalysts for sustainable change in their respective fields. So we're going to gain insights today from two very different vantage points: corporate South Africa and then from a more socio-economic level. So Cheree and Rachel, I'd like to welcome you. For those of you that are not too familiar, Cheree Dyers is presently one of the few female CEOs in the investment industry. She is an inspirational lady, not only to people within the Prescient Group, but I think also the broader asset management industry. And then Rachel Kolisi should need no introduction, but she is a passionate and bold humanitarian who really is passionate about the disenfranchised and being a voice for the marginalized people. I think if I've studied correctly, you have a deep desire to see all South Africans afforded equal opportunity and specifically to support women. So with that being said, it would be very easy for me to sit in awe next to a CEO and quite a famous activist in South Africa. But I was recently reminded that every woman has actually walked quite a path, and it's been a journey to get her to where she is today. So with that in mind, I thought, Cheree, you weren't born the CEO of Prescient Investment Management. So I thought maybe you could share with us some of your empowering story. Were there any stereotypes and glass ceilings that you had to break through in becoming the CEO of Prescient Investment Management?
Thank you, Kirsty. It's quite uncomfortable for me to talk about myself, so this is a new experience. But what I can say is that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. So I continue to grow, I continue to learn. So that's my starting point. I've never been known what it is that I want to do. I have been ambitious, and I knew that I wanted to succeed at everything I did. So my journey with Prescient started 15 years ago. I started off in Prescient Investment Management, being head of finance. And of course, I wanted to be the best CFO I could be. I then moved on to Prescient Securities, where I was an analyst, and there the goal was to get rated. I never had been a CEO in my vision board. In many ways, I am a reluctant leader. I'm a leader that serves, so my job I need to grow other people and to help them succeed. So when I was asked to be the CEO of Prescient Investment Management, it was completely unexpected. I was actually part of the panel that was interviewing other candidates for the job to be CEO of Prescient, and when Herman and Billy said they've got a proposition for me and said, would you like to be the CEO of Prescient Investment Management, I said, are you insane? There's just no way, this wasn't part of the plan. Anyway, I'm quite thoughtful. I walked away, and when you see opportunity and when opportunity knocks, you have to take it, and at the end of the day, you have to back yourself. So it's been 2.5 years of lots of pressure and lots of fun. I see my leadership journey really on 3 levels. So bear with me. It's a bit of, can give you a bit of altitude sickness. So at 50,000 feet, really, you're looking at the strategy of the business. You're looking at dealing with different stakeholders, everybody in the equation. And that learning curve for me over the past, I'd say 5 years, being in the role of leadership and CEO, that's been the steepest learning curve, but also the most fun. Where you cut your teeth when you are in the middle of your career is really at 5,000 feet, where you are planning and you are executing, and you just put your head down and you work. You know, that's an important part really to earn your stripes. And then at 5 feet is when you look at the self. And many of us, especially women, we neglect that part. We're quite shy to ask for time off to study. We're shy to ask for promotion. We don't challenge the norms that we have. We feel the pressure and we sort of go with it. So that's the part that you have to be quite deliberate on in working on. So yeah, and at the end of the day, at all 3 levels, be flexible. You know, give yourself a break. You can never find balance. You are going to get altitude sickness. So you have to continue to have fun, and that's what my journey has been about. I think in our industry, the stereotypes that hinder women from joining the industry is the thought that asset management or financial services is about pinstripe suits and investment banking and bad movies that get made. And women don't really realize how flexible the industry is once you're in it. It's very outcome based. There's a lot of risk management that takes place. It's very organized. And there's flexibility. You're in a professional environment, professional mindset. So once you join the industry, you've got a lot of flexibility to carve a career for yourself. And you can actually have it all. You can be a mum, you can be a CEO, you can be whatever it is that you want to be. So I think, are there difficult people in our industry? Of course. we manage people's money.
The industry that doesn't have difficult people.
And are the unconscious biases? For sure. I mean, we're all human, and I think the presence of that unconscious bias results in like attracting like. So if we continue to do what we do, it's kind of the definition of insanity, because you'll be perpetuating those biases. So you have to work really hard at breaking that mindset. And I think the characteristic that I hold quite dear, and which I learned being in stockbroking, is that you can't be an emotional hoarder. You have to let the past go. So if something happens, if you've said your piece, you were honest, you attacked the problem head on, you move on, you move past it. I think sometimes that's quite difficult for people to deal with, especially when they're interacting with me. We'd have difficult words, but really after we've said our say, we kind of move on. So to break the glass ceilings, I think that's also a challenge for us as women, and we need females as role models in leadership in all fields of investment management. Women have to see that if there is a role model, someone else has done it, and so can I. They need to be inspired. So I was very fortunate to be mentored by both women before me and still today, and then also the men in Prescient, incredible human beings that really see my success as their success. That's part of the founder's DNA, and I think a privilege for me to have been on that journey.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
I have a question, actually, if I can. You mentioned when the opportunity came, so you didn't feel that you becoming the CEO was part of the plan. And you said when the opportunity came, you took it. Did you feel like you were prepared for that? Or you had kind of, you'd set a bar for yourself?
I didn't doubt that I could run the business. I did have concerns about being new to the asset management industry. I was worried about fit. I was worried about leaving the position that I had at the time. And I was part of the discussion in the profile that we had built for the kind of person that we wanted to lead the business. So I didn't doubt my skill set. I mean, like I said, I'm still learning. But I did. It was so unexpected that I thought, and being the CEO of the business, you're the spirit of the business. that you embody the culture, you have to inspire, you have to carry the sort of ambitions of employees, of shareholders, of clients, first and foremost. And if you think about it, too much, you're going to pass out because it's a massive responsibility.
But isn't that also interesting? Because I feel my experience is that many women don't see themselves the way that the people around them do.
Yeah.
And I think that your exact experience and having to go through that, not really considering yourself a candidate and then being the candidate, I think that happens very often. And I think women, like you did, take the opportunity and step up because it's important for you to grow.
I think it's worth pushing yourself and not comparing yourself to others before you, or sort of looking on the side and saying, I mean, we all suffer from imposter syndrome to some extent, and depending on your leadership style, you know, if you lead sort of just by serving others, that's quite different to our industry as well. So you question all of that. You've got these little niggles in your head, but you know, have to just build a bridge and get over it.
And you, Rachel, perhaps you could share with us what catapulted you towards being a humanitarian and an activist, because you were a Smith before you were a Kolisi, and I get the sense that your journey started way before you became a wife.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think my journey just kind of started years ago, and just kind of opening my eyes to the reality of what's going on in South Africa. And you know, the reality for some of us is far nicer than the reality for a lot of the rest of us, you know. So my eyes kind of got open, and I actually shared during the week that it wasn't always easy for me to see the struggle in South Africa. I was very blinded by a lot, very can't say protected, but very hidden from the truth of what's actually going on in our country. And just as I kind of grew and developed, you know, people is just like standing at the robots, you know, you're like, how, but if you just try and imagine, how did they actually get to that point? Like, how did their life land them up here, the robots? And I think that if we start as South Africans to really look at the root of the problem, we're going to see a way bigger issue than what we ever imagined. You know, it's not as simple as someone making a bad decision and landing up at the robots. You know, have a conversation with them. And I have actually had a couple of conversations with people that live on the streets. And there was a man recently, I went for dinner, and I was chatting to him afterwards, and he was saying he had lost his wife and his son in a car accident, and just couldn't manage, and ended up getting into drinking, and through that lost a lot of friends, lost his job, lost everything, and eventually landed up on the street. So you know, a lot of people, and it's I actually wrote down some stuff here from social media of like what people have said about me, but a lot of people are like, oh, she married the Springbok rugby captain, and see, I wasn't captain when I married him. In fact, he was way down the line when I got there. And that's why I truly believe that the power that a woman holds in the success of not only her partner but in herself is so much greater than we could ever imagine. And I think that we underestimate that so much because we're so used to it. We're like, oh, but you know, it just happens. But that holds so much power. And yeah, I think just a lot of people assume because, you know, I'm married to Sia, like that's how I elevated myself. But I chose to use my voice, and I made a decision to use my platform and do something good with that. And I think I'm obviously very active on social media, and I touched on earlier, you know, just some of the issues around social media, and you touched on it as well, the pandemic that women have themselves of just comparison among one another is such an issue, and just trying to tackle that is really a challenge in itself, but it's super important because I believe that you know, we're constantly comparing ourselves to this unrealistic expectation of a woman, and again, you know, saying you can't have kids, you can't have a great career, you can't be fit, be healthy, go home and cook, be a sane mother, hold your marriage together. It's impossible for you to do that. who told you that? Who said that it's not possible to do that? And also, who draws the line at the expectation of a woman? So I think there's a number of, you know, dynamics that go into it. But for me, I really just found my value and my purpose in, again, serving others. And it may look a little different to you, but to me, it's about changing a nation, and I won't stop using my platform and my voice until I see equality in South Africa. Does that mean it's going to be easy? Absolutely not. Does it mean it's going to be uncomfortable at times? Absolutely. It's going to take a lot of uncomfortable conversations and a lot of unlearning for a lot of people. But I think it's necessary. And, you know, are we at the stage of unity and Rainbow Nation in South Africa? Absolutely not. Do I believe we can get there? 100%. It's just going to take some challenges to get there, but that's okay. I think if you're willing to overcome them and work through it, then I truly believe we're going to be the most incredibly powerful country in the world.
Well, that's fantastic. I love your enthusiasm and optimism.
I also got a question. How do you, when you're at the front line seeing the hardships that people are going through, because that is what you do, you have to look after your emotional well-being as well. So someone told me once, a leader is a dealer in hope. Yep. So you walk in, and it doesn't matter how hard things are, you are positive, and you know, you turn the lights on and you switch them off. How do you stay positive emotionally? Because it's quite draining to be part of the sad part of our nation.
It's that, absolutely, and that's a great question, because it has been extremely draining, especially during this COVID time. You know, not only are we dealing with a global pandemic, but as a country we're dealing with a pandemic of gender-based violence in South Africa. And you know, we founded the foundation without a website, without a logo, without all the things, because we were like, we just want to get to work, we just want to help people, and so we did. But we really got into the food security side of things, so making sure people were fed so they could stay home. And one of the things we moved into in August, you know, being Women's Month, was gender-based violence. And man, there was a young girl that we all would have read about, Amahle, who had been raped and murdered and left in a dumpster in Philippines. And just about a month ago, I went to go meet her family, because I was like, we as South Africans, we read the news and we're like, oh, it's so sad, another person, another situation, you know, another attack. But what does that mean? How does that leave the family? You know, what state is that? They don't get any support, any emotional, any financial, any support at all. The mom was just like, I just had to go pick up her clothes, and that was that. And I think for those stories are not told. Those stories of the families are not told. But it definitely takes a toll on you. You know, when you're going day after day after day, hearing these kinds of stories, and you're just like, it's so much. But then you'll get someone that just the lights turn on for them, and they're like a man or a white person in South Africa. The lights will just be like, I understand, like I get it, I know what you're saying. And then you're just like, okay, I can keep going, because this is awesome. Like, for someone, like, the lights have gone on, things have changed for them. And then you just see like flickers of hope that they are there. And the people that you meet in the communities that are doing incredible work without any support at all. And then you just have this like, I'm so hopeful because there's those people. So you can absolutely be overwhelmed by the heaviness of situations and the heaviness of the current state of our nation. You can absolutely be overwhelmed, but there are flickers of hope, and it's to really just focus more of your energy onto that is super important. And I don't have it. Not every day do I wake up and I'm like, wow, today's going to be a great day. Like, I was chatting about having teenagers. If any of you have teenagers, you know the struggle. It's just a struggle in itself, and that's a pandemic of itself, actually. But it just makes you know, that I don't have it together all the time. Like, some days are really difficult for me, but I prioritize me, and it's something I think as women we don't do enough. We pour into others, we make sure everyone's okay, we nurture everybody, but coming back to ourselves at the end of the day to make sure we're okay, we don't do that. And I think that for the sanity, for my sanity, and also for the safety of my family at home, I do make sure that I take care of myself and I spend time with myself.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, listening to a little bit of both of your stories, you are both women who have risen. And I love that. I've always been incredibly fond of Marian Ann Williamson's quote, which Nelson Mandela used in his inaugural speech in 1994. And it just highlights that there is nothing enlightened about shrinking yourself to not allow other people to feel insecure.
Yeah.
I think that, when you let your own light shine, you unconsciously allow other people to do the same. And I think you're both shining examples of women who have done that.
As are you.
Thank you. So you inspire other women and encourage them just to be their best selves. So, women in leadership to act as role models for other women. They inspire other women to be able to want to succeed. They see the path and career path. So, Cheree, you would also be in a position then to have the power to make change and make things possible for other women. So in what way have you found or been able to foster diversity and inclusion, and I'd say professional development amongst women in the workplace, and maybe examples at Prescient itself?
Okay, great question.
I can't wait for this. I'm excited.
She's calling me to task. Okay, so I think promoting women to C-suite positions, which sort of the CEO type level, it goes a long way to sending a very strong message about the intent to drive change. So and it will get momentum. Once you are there, you can then use that position to drive change. And for me, that's a massive privilege. It's something that I take quite seriously. But we are dealing with people. And change doesn't happen overnight. I think what you have to bring to the table is your authentic self. We were chatting earlier on about the stories that we tell about each other and to one another. If it's not real, people can smell the bullshit. So, so you have to keep it real. And I think in keeping it real, people will see your intentions, and that's really important. That diversity and change has to be positive. Everybody has to buy into it. Everybody has to believe it, and then they come along with you. So I think in the short term, it's really critical that we have more senior executives within business and within Prescient. I'm pleased that we do have that. We are working towards that on a daily basis. We are short. We do development, and we have people earmarked for positions. So there is no ceiling at Prescient. I think also the way in which we operate obviously fosters diversity, inclusion, and development. And I'll tell you why. It's really part of Prescient's DNA for us to operate as teams. And if you study teams and you know most effective teams are about, I mean, in rugby it's the same thing. Yeah. Everybody brings a different skill set. Everybody has a strength. And the more diversity you have, whether it be your strength or whether it be your makeup or whether it be your gender, that is the beauty of building a strong team. Then you get a result that you want. You become results driven. We also grow our own timber. So I was raised in Prescient, been here for 15 years, and started really at the bottom. And there are many stories like me with Prescient. So we are very much a teaching business. So we've got a graduate program. We partner with universities and scout for talent. We have the Prescient Foundation, which is all about sustainability and making a difference in people's lives for good, sustainable change. And the Prescient Foundation, through partnership with the businesses, we do bursaries for kids that show potential, and we take them. We've got 2 examples of kids that started in primary school and have now gone on to qualify at tertiary education and have changed their family's lives forever. So just takes one. So that's a sustainable change. We partner with a CISA in many ways to do both job shadowing and training. So I'd say just in terms of how we approach business and development and growth, it's just about getting the women into the door. Yes. So you have to be deliberate, obviously, when you hire people, but once you get inside, the building blocks, the platform, all of that is there. You will be nurtured because that is what we do. So it's not something that we speak about explicitly, it's just kind of organically evolves. I would say that there are 3 really important things for you to achieve effective diversification. So the ingredients are that there has to be a belief within the business. If it's not real, if it's just a box ticking exercise, then that's going to show. I mean, you can't just say we need a face for this and we'll do it. Because what thing inevitably happens is you get fatigue. Because it's not real, and you then make short-term decisions. You sort of back off. You say, oh,
yeah,
we'll do it in the next round, and before you know it, you didn't change anything. You also need courage. I think you need courage to think much broader about the skill set of people. So when you're interviewing for a position and you see a woman's CV, but you're looking for the attributes of a man, that's clearly square peg round hole.
Yeah.
And we've got a good example of that within our investment management business, where we employ data scientists, and they are excellent at coding and really changing the world and sort of disrupting the way that we manage money in our industry. But they know nothing about finance. But we don't need them to know anything about finance. We can teach them that. So come and join us. So you have to kind of think out of the box to be able to make diversity changes that you need. And then you need consistency. It's a very neglected attribute, I think, within many businesses. So we say we're going to do something and we do it once or twice and then we stop. But then we claim that we have a program. So many companies get daunted by short-term thinking. They just do it because today that's the right reason to do it. So I think some pressure, be it quotas or otherwise, I think within the South African and global experience, there is a need for it, because targets are noble, but it's just not enough. And there needs to be consistency and accountability, because if you're dealing with businesses that don't believe in those 3 ingredients to drive change, then everything, the status quo will remain unchallenged.
It's fantastic. Okay, so good. Like I've literally just taken the notes for myself, because I mean, I have a business, right? A business called Rise, and it's a women's organization that helps women live more purposeful lives through health and fitness, and it's incredible. And we host these amazing events all around South Africa, and we would have gone international without the pandemic. But I remember there was one event that we did in Pretoria with 60 women, and the only person of color in the room was working for us, and everyone else was just not a person of color. And I remember just like, okay, something's not going right here. We, as the founders and the owners of this company, are not doing something right to make sure that everyone feels included, everyone feels welcome. And just the 3 points, I mean, I was going to hit you with a question like, how do we transform? But just those 3 points that you've given are incredibly helpful. And I think that the point of anyone can learn, that is so important. I actually saw this incredible post yesterday on social media of a man who was working security at a bank, and for years, probably like 11 years, and he was amazing. But one of the top guys at the bank kept coming in and seeing him, greeting him every morning, and then he heard one of the tellers had left, and he had inquired about that position, and it turns out he had been studying and almost completely qualified for the position. And the guy actually posted, the story of it, but he posted the picture with him on Friday in his security uniform, and then the picture with him on Monday in his suit and tie, like ready for work. How amazing is that? And I'm just like, how good if like we all have that mindset of like, let's teach each other, let's grow one another, let's get us to the next level, and I think that it's such an important part for men to play in these environments as well, is make room for us. We're not saying we don't want you there. We're not saying you shouldn't be there. We're saying make room for us, that we can also be involved and be a part of the change and help make it sustainable. And I love that Prescient has chosen a sustainable route, that it's not like a one-stop shop. And that point that you made as well of just showing your face to like satisfy. I mean, that's a form of tokenism anyway, and nobody wants that. You know, we want it to be sustainable. We want it to be, you know, exactly, absolutely, and authentic and true and what's right at the end of the day. And sometimes that means, you know, a man needs to make a, you know, for him a risk and for us an opportunity. But and how do we manage that? How do we make sure that we are holding the responsibility of making sure there's room for more women and sustainability in the workplace? So that's incredible, and the 3 points you made are just so practical and so easy to work with. So that's amazing.
I think it's about being adaptable, because women maybe need to take a gap and have the opportunity presented to themselves, and likewise on the flip side of that, men also need to adapt. So I think it's for everybody to be more adaptable in their approach, a little bit more flexible, not be too rigid or stick to
defensive.
Defensive. Roll with the positive changes that come your way. You touched on Rise now, so I was going to say, I know Rise was, you know, inspired by the comparison epidemic amongst women. I'm not sure if you want to go into a little bit more pertaining to the lessons maybe that you've learned through not only transforming women from a physical point of view, but I think changing your physical appearance sometimes gives you the confidence you need to make more meaningful changes in your life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen that, or you could maybe share with us some of your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we even go into that, if any of you have any questions for us, please hit us with the good stuff. You know, we said we were going to put out the bad ones, but just bring them all in and see what we can work with. We'll deal with it as we go. But yeah, so Rise was basically birthed out of a place of desperation. I was going through something really difficult. My partner, Tammy Rostron, she actually contacted me on social media. She said that she had been at a bride and the Springboks were playing, and everyone was like, oh, all hail Sia, he's amazing. Of course he is, and there's no one who would agree with that more than myself. But she said there were a group of men at the bride who went on to say how they felt so sorry for him because I had let myself go and put on so much weight after having my daughter. So I've got 2 kids, well 4 kids, but I've birthed 2 children. And after having my daughter, how I put on so much weight and just how disgusting I'm looking, and she was horrified. And so she contacted me on social media and she's like, listen, I don't know why, but I just feel so moved to like reach out to you. And she's a personal trainer, and so she reached out to me. She's like, do you want to start training with me? And I did. And I'm very, you know, as I mentioned, active on social media, and a lot of women are just like, oh my gosh, like, we want this, like, how are you doing this? We want to be a part of the journey. It's amazing how you're transforming your not only your physical appearance, but like your mind, heart, soul, like all of that. And so we're like, how can we make this a journey that all women, Tam and I went on a journey together. How do we make this possible for everyone to join? And so then Rise was created, and we launched an ebook, and we wanted to launch it, you know, at an event. We had an event, and just the women that came into the room were desperate for community. And honestly, I don't believe there's anything more powerful than when women come together in a common cause and something that they want to go to battle for, you know. And you know, women on their own is so powerful, so valued, so incredible, but women together, so we created a community of women that are all just journeying together, you know. And through the pandemic time, we wanted to still continue to serve the women as best we can, or as best we could. And so we launched Rise Studios, which is more the fitness side of things, and then Rise Mama for the moms, because I mean, we all know it's another struggle. And just for a community of women where you can share realness, authenticity, just real life, you know, and how do we navigate it? How do we journey through it together? And it's to cancel out this whole thing of like, I want to look like that. I want to have a body like that. I want to have it all together like that. And I want to bake for my kids like that and do all the good things, you know, and just be like, we're not perfect. We don't have it all together all the time, and that's okay. And that's the reality that we live in. So Rise has just been the most incredible journey, but as I mentioned, we are going through a transformation, which is It is challenging because not everyone is on the same page, and it's a lot of navigating feelings and opinions and, you know, stances people may be on, and you just get, you know, I think there's a lot of people sitting on the fence, and you're like, if we can just encourage you to just step over the fence and come onto the right side of history. It's the most beautiful thing when you have the truth and you see the truth, you know, and you see it for what it is, and it sets people free. It sets you free from like a bondage almost, you know, and it ignites a fire inside of you. So, yeah, we're navigating the transformation, and it is a bit of a challenge at the moment, but man, I think it's going to be so incredible to see a room full of South African women that just like are going to be on a journey to living their very best lives. So yeah, it's a challenge now, but it's the goal that I'm looking towards.
That's fantastic. I think many women, they just need encouragement to take that step and take the first action. And by taking that first action, you never know where you'll land up.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to achieve anything sitting at home on your couch doing nothing. So just get up and get going.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful.
I love the Rise Mama concept, because I think for me as a working mom, I know what the struggle is to have kids who need to be looked after, and I've got the privilege of having support. So when I come to work, there's someone to look after them, or my husband can drive them around, or my parents can do whatever they need to. But there are many women, especially in our country, where travel and leisure, sort of the hospitality industries, it's got all sorts of hours that you need to work, and it's really hard for a woman to balance having to work long hours and leaving her kids in the safety of someone else.
And maternity leave, like in the workspace, that's a whole other conversation, and what does that entail as well? I mean, absolutely.
So I think so if you were to say like what could we do more of, it's definitely supporting the woman who works. So I mean, our chairman Herman is a visionary, and a big part of his story is that we need to reimagine office space. We need to think of creches in the workplace. We need to support the communities, you know, build a space that's accessible for not just women but all people really, single dads, single moms, to be supported so that we can get the economy going. It's good for all of us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that kind of feeds into the question now. You know, women make up 50% of the global population, and if you are holding them back or not allowing them to participate in a positive way in communities and the broader economy, you know, that is a big problem. And I think if you distill that through our conversations, I've realized maybe it comes down to opportunity, because in corporate South Africa, if we're talking about women who are doing well from a career perspective, you know, they've taken opportunities to get to where they are. And then on the other side of that, there's so many women who haven't been afforded those opportunities. So maybe, you know, women have been underrepresented, I suppose, in the broader financial services industry for many years, but that's fast changing. And there are various, I suppose, social and cultural reasons for that, but you can kind of distill it down to one thing, and that's rising economic might in our space. So, you know, women are becoming more and more important from a income perspective, and they can stand toe to toe with men in that environment. So, Cheree, perhaps you could share with us if you've got some insights pertaining to pay gaps. You know, there's also I almost want to say the care gap that exists in trying to achieve gender parity, because women do pick up on historically, not for everybody, but I mean, I'd say they take more of the slack from a home perspective and the caregiving perspective. And I mean, that does translate to an extent, even just from a career perspective. You know, do all companies allow you to have the flexibility that Prescient does so that you're able to do both? So perhaps you could just touch on that for us.
Okay. Also a loaded question.
So we're coming for you, girl.
Okay, on pay gap, I'm pleased to say that within our industry, it's also quite transparent. There are surveys you can subscribe to, and you can get a good sense about what the level of pay is in absolute terms, and then also in relative terms for the job that you're doing relative to your experience and everything else. But that's not enough. So I think a lot of fuss is made, especially around Women's Month, around pay gaps. And then for the rest of the 11 months, we don't think about it. We sort of ignore it, we forget about it. So I think proper data around disclosure on not just where women are represented, but what the level of influence is. Because it's fine to say, at Prescient, for example, we have 55% of our workforce is women. But what percentage do we have in leadership roles? Again, there we do very well. It's between 30 and 40%. But do we know that about everybody in the industry? Do we know when a woman studies commerce or HR and she comes into our industry, how does she progress? What makes her leave? Does she leave to start a family? Is it the stresses? Is it the environment? Is it inflexibility? What is it that makes a woman leave? And if we have good data, then we know how to correct ourselves as an industry, and we can adjust. Because again, if you're just sort of shooting the breeze, you're making assumptions and assertions about why women join the industry or don't join, and why they leave the industry. So we actually need proper data sets to truly assess the influence women have across the board in all the roles that we occupy. And then I think we need to review old school decision making. So if you think about performance review, how many jobs have you had or places have you worked at where you'd love some flexibility, but you know, if you ask for flexibility and the guy sitting next to you is here from 6 to 6, you know, it's like, I'm just going to sit here, even though I could very easily do the same job at home, but I don't have the courage to ask. Or how often do you suspect, I think I'm being Schneider, but you don't have the courage to ask. So we need to be better at building a system or process where women, all people really, feel free to have open discussions about where it is that they stand, and be free, sort of be comfortable to ask for flexibility where flexibility is needed. I mean, you have to be an outcomes-based industry, so it's not difficult for us to do that. So I think that COVID has been a great catalyst to test the work from home strategy. So, I mean, I actually hear about more men in Prescient who want to work from home now than I do women, which is quite ironic, but that's great. We need the men to.
I mean, on that point, I must say, it's an interesting point, because as a woman, of course you don't want to work at home because you're cooking, cleaning, bathing kids, feeding kids, putting them to bed.
Distracted.
No, so for me, I'm like, get me out of my house. Like, put me in an office, please. That's my sanity time. But it's an interesting point that more men are keen to work at home than women, and it's probably because of that fact. And I think that, obviously that's going a little bit more into your personal life, but during our COVID season, you best know I took advantage of my husband being home, because the man travels about 6 months of the year and he's never home, and I'm doing everything, and that's the way that our setup is. But when he was home, I was like, now you're going to be home. This is where the pots and the pans are. Here's the dishwashing liquid. Here's the washing powder. Let me show you how to use the machine. Here's where you hang the washing. No, he got so domesticated during this time, and luckily he loved it.
Did you do all right? Did you
But I think it's important that, have a conversation in your household as well, because if your man is feeling like he can go work from home, then you should technically be feeling the same way. Why you're not? So I think have the tough conversations at home if you need to. But for me, I didn't even wait. I was like, oh, hey. No, literally. And the minute you got some flexibility to go work from an office or go to a gym, I was like, catch me outside. I'm out of here.
So you won't be surprised that I was here throughout lockdown.
I probably would have been here too. I don't even work at Prescient. Hey, how are you?
Rachel, just on a more socioeconomic, from that standpoint, I think that so many women are playing a balancing act because they do land up being primary caregivers, and they are maybe struggling to provide for base needs within their households. What has your experience been in terms of the opportunities afforded to people and women who maybe find themselves in quite a hopeless situation?
Oh, you know what? I must just tell you, before I dive into that subject, which is the part of this, but on, where are we? So yesterday, Tuesday, I went to the Heartlands Baby Sanctuary, and they were telling me about these 3 children that had been brought in. An 8-year-old was walking around with his 1-month-old baby sister and his 2-year-old sister walking around looking for food. And so the cops picked them up and brought them into a place of safety. And diving into, I asked them, like, where was their parents? Like, that's insane. And they just said that actually the mom had left them at home because she didn't have a job, and the kids were starving. She was starving, so she was out trying to find food. And then obviously they got so hungry at home, they started walking around looking for food as well. And can you imagine being that mom? Like, can you imagine being that mom? Can you imagine having 3 starving kids at home, and you don't have anything yourself, and you go out to go look for food, and then your 3 children are taken away from you? I mean, and then where do you can't afford legal advice? Where do you even start to try to get your children back, and how do you take them back when you don't have anything for them? So, and that's the reality of our country. Like, this is happening on a daily basis, and yes, our government plays a huge role in that, and yes, they should be doing more, absolutely. But we're gonna be shouting and screaming at them until we're blue in the face. And I truly believe the responsibility falls on each and every single one of us. And until we feel the weight of that responsibility for our nation, nothing is actually going to change. Like, it's all of us that need to make a shift, in our hearts and in our minds and the way we view our country, and are we getting out of our perfectly comfortable bubbles to go see what a reality looks like for somebody else in our country, or are we just comfortable here, so we'll just stay, And I think that it's something that, and that's why I love that you guys have a foundation, and that's something that that you guys can kind of make a reality for all of the staff of Prescient, and what they do, and what they're exposed to, But I think for me, just the opportunity for women and for people of color in our country in general is not near where it needs to be. It's far off from where it should be, and it's also navigating how do we make that sustainable? How do we make it continue to, hand off, it's great, it makes you feel great, they appreciate it, but very wonderful. And also, they're already stressing about the next month, how they're going to get through the next month. So I think, how can you do something sustainable for somebody else? How can you get something lasting? And I think that if every single one of us who finds ourselves in a place of privilege, no matter what that looks like, if we're all just choosing to help someone, one family, one person for some sort of sustainable opportunity, we're going to get ourselves into a really great place.
There's actually a question that's come through now. I think it's pertinent to this point. So it says, most of us have the desire to help, and there's so many areas that need help in South Africa, but what advice could you give someone who wants to give back but does not know quite where to start? Because I think you'll find there are more people than you think that would love to be able to get involved, and they don't know how to.
The thing is also, that's a great question, and I'm happy to answer it. It's overwhelming. When you look at all the problems in South Africa, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. And that's kind of where we were as a foundation. And everyone was like, okay, you need to tell us what you are focusing on. And I was like, well, we focus on gender-based violence, fatherlessness in South Africa, food security in South Africa. And they're like, okay, that's already too many. I was like, well, I've got 3 more and I'm leaving it at 6. So I was like, and if there's more than that, then so be it. But that's the kind of attitude that I have towards it. I'm just like, there's so many issues. Why not just like tackle as many as you possibly can? But as an individual, that's a different conversation. And I think that take a minute to think of something that absolutely shatters your heart. Take a minute. It might be a child on the street. It might be an adult on the street. It might be animals that are, not taken care of in our country. Babies abandoned. What breaks your heart? Figure that out, what that is. And that's where your passion actually lies. That's where you should be focusing and what you should be delving into. And for me, it's a couple of things, but for me, it's really the youth in our country and the fact that there are children in our country that are abandoned, that are not cared for, that are not receiving the same opportunity as everybody else in our country. That breaks my heart. So that's something that I really focus on as an individual. So I go work in schools, and you'll find many organizations that work on the project that breaks your heart, that you can literally volunteer at. If you're in a position financially to donate, great. If it's time, I know a lot of baby sanctuaries and orphanages that if you're willing to be consistent, because it's again not a one-stop shop, you can't visit to make yourself feel full and then leave. You've got to make sure that it's because you're serving those children and you are committing to a weekly visit or a monthly visit. But what does that look like exactly for you? I think it's establish what it is that hurts you the most and go and do something about it. Because I think for the longest time we all kind of like, I would love to go donate, I would love to go spend time, but what action are you taking to actually make it happen? And there is no better time than to find out what it is that you want to help with in South Africa now during this pandemic, because the need is greater than it's ever been. And there's soup kitchens actually and organizations that I've worked with that have been so grateful for the pandemic, because they were hungry long before the pandemic, they were hungry during the pandemic, and they'll be hungry long after the pandemic. And for them, they've just had a light shine on the work that they've already been doing. So they almost like, thank goodness for the pandemic, because people actually see what we're doing now. And are we choosing to keep our eyes open to the problems and to doing something about it, or are we just like, oh, pandemic's over, let's carry on with our daily life? So find what breaks your heart and go do something about it.
I've just had one more question come through, and I'm just aware of the time and the fact that we're going to run out of it quite soon. But a lady has said, hello to you, inspiring women. I've recently been promoted within my organization, but a couple of weeks later found out that I'm pregnant. Whilst the company has been extremely supportive, I can't seem to get out of my own head. Will I make it? Can I manage both a career and a family? I don't want to give up either. I value both. Do you have any advice on processing the adjustments I will be faced with?
So I've got a short story on that. So I joined Prescient in 2005, and 3 months later found out that I was pregnant. And I was scared out of my mind, probably going through the same thing, because I thought, I probably don't qualify for benefits. I'm toast, I'm going to lose my job. And I decided to hide it. Big mistake. Put it back here. It was a big mistake, because I actually started showing quite soon. I decided to wait till I was 6 months, and then I called Cheree and I said, I need to have a conversation with you. And he said, what, you're pregnant? We know. That's fine. I think Guy knew I was pregnant when I was sort of at 4 months or something, because he had 4 kids and I think he could tell. So it was, there's no shame in it. I think it's happened to many women after me within Prescient as well. I think if the skill that you have is valued, if the company culture is, you're there for a reason. So if the culture is embracing, being pregnant is part of life. Look, the time flies. There is no reason for you to not acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So it's actually not such a big deal, and I would be surprised if there's any backlash around it. I think the fact that you were promoted means that the company has a positive disposition towards you, so there's no reason to have any fear whatsoever. And most companies also see it as an opportunity, really, to show that they care.
Yeah.
So I think it's wonderful news, and just be positive about it. How you deal with it matters more than how they deal with it.
I think the fact that she's feeling that way though is already a problem, because then the company's not doing something they probably should do to make sure that she feels confident to have the conversation and to bring it up. So it might be an opportunity for you to maybe challenge it for women that are coming after you as well.
That's a good point.
A conversation to have with the company and say, I'm pregnant and I don't feel like I have an open door to having the conversation with you, and that's a problem. Yeah, it might be an opportunity for them to do something about that and make sure that all women feel like they can come with the best news of your life. I mean, it depends what day of the week you're looking at, but the best news of your life, to be able to share that and celebrate that with the people that you work with, I think is super important, and you shouldn't feel concerned about that at all.
I think getting out of your head is an important part.
Yes.
So you actually just have to say it.
Yeah.
And it will all work out. Ladies, we're coming close to the end of our time with you. We have put together a short video, so it's going to be from the Kolisi Foundation as well as the Prescient Foundation. So please watch them, enjoy them, and if you'd like to get in touch with us because you want to get involved and you feel passionate about any of the causes that we all support, please feel free to reach out because we would love to point you in the right direction. And thank you very much to both of you.
You're amazing.
Sharing with us.
I'll touch you.
I'll do that.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a super day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Kolisi Foundation is focusing on a lot of different issues in South Africa, like poverty and inequality. But right now we are faced with this pandemic and we are focusing on that by helping the vulnerable and those in need. The Kolisi Foundation is our heart in one project.
We have a vision to change the narrative of South Africa through our partnerships that we have created by remembering the one by one. We believe that we can change a nation.
In January 2005, Prescient established a conduit for its commitment to development and empowerment, the Prescient Foundation. Prescient believes that you need to enable people to improve their lifestyle. This is real empowerment and enables communities to grow. The distribution of funds currently focuses on housing assistance to staff, education, and adult skills development. Prescient contributes time, funds, and expertise to improving the circumstances of those around us, and thus, ultimately, the future of our own children.
Dankie, Prescient!